In Judy Woodruff's previous report, Harvard political scientist Robert Putnam said that strengthening the country's democracy would begin in places far from Washington, with grassroots efforts by people stepping up in their own communities. Now she visits a down but not out community in California that's fighting for a comeback one round at a time. It's part of her ongoing series, America at a Crossroads.
Just over 60 miles east of Los Angeles lies California's Inland Empire, where 20-year-old Terry Washington is attempting to beat the odds.
I'll definitely be a world champion. Definitely be a world champion. It's going to definitely happen.
Some very high aspirations, despite growing up in one of the most dangerous cities in the country.
I've seen a lot of stuff. I've lost a lot of friends, more than 5 friends. While I was boxing. Lost a lot of family members in this city, all over, and it's tough.
This was a bustling downtown.
Journalist Jim Fallows grew up near San Bernardino, a place that in 1977 won the award for All America City. But in the years since, its fortunes flipped. I met up with him and his wife Deborah for a tour of the city that they've reported on in depth for years.
This is just a few miles from where I grew up in the neighboring city of Redlands, so it's a story I've known my whole life.
Blocks of vacant buildings and homeless camps now dot the city that was once home to the bustling Norton Air Force Base that closed in 1994. That followed the shuttering of a nearby steel mill a decade earlier. Together, the closures gutted the economy. In the years after the 2008 financial crisis, the city declared bankruptcy, along with many others.
Places that have depended on a couple of big industries have generally had a harder time to adapting to the inevitable transformation of the U.S. economy. You see that with steel mills in the Midwest, you see it at textile mills, you see it here in San Bernardino. And the question is whether the community can respond or recover.
President Trump won San Bernardino County in November, the first Republican to do so in 20 years. And researchers say the question of whether it can recover is not just driving the future of this place, but of the country more broadly, as it wrestles with growing polarization, inequality, gridlock in Washington, and the devastation of local news.
We ask people to tell us the story of your town.
Communities like this sparked the Fallows' interest in starting a 5-year, 100,000-mile reporting project in 2012 that became their book and an HBO documentary, Our Towns, chronicling their journey across the country in their single-engine propeller plane. We met up recently at Alice's restaurant here in San Bernardino to talk about what they learned.
When we started doing this 10 plus years ago, our main reaction was surprise at all the things we didn't know about, because we felt like people who followed the U.S. media knew all about New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco and D.C., but not necessarily about Duluth or about Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or about Columbus, Mississippi.
One of the strongest impressions that we got were that the people who lived in the towns knew the towns best. They knew their strengths, they knew their problems. People knew if their schools weren't working quite right, or they knew if they needed to improve the infrastructure of their library, or they knew if they needed new town leadership.
What do you think you were able to learn and to report to the American people on?
By the time we'd finished several years of this, we thought that the view Americans had of their country was imbalanced in a negative way, that most people felt better about where they lived, the part of America they knew about firsthand, than the part of America they only heard about.
For boxer Terry Washington, his life began to change at just age 8 when he met his coach, Ian Franklin.
I was a fighter. You know, one of the days he passed by, he said he saw me fighting in the front premises of our apartments.
As a person, he's a champion. I see the influence he has on kids. I see how he handles the youth in here. He works for us. He's one of our boxing coaches. And kids gravitate toward him. He has a God-given ability to influence kids in the right way.
So long. Nice to see you again.
Franklin's nonprofit, Project Fighting Chance, has worked for 26 years to put kids on the right path. Between 30 and 60 students show up here every day after school for a meal, a tutoring session,
try to move your knife forward,
a game of chess, and of course, boxing.
What we say we do is we reduce childhood violence, aggression, and trauma. It's about people that want something to change, but if they're not doing something, I think everybody has to look in the mirror and say, okay, if I don't like the environment that I'm in, what can I do?
I feel like it's been in the hands of the community since you were here 10 years ago, right? Yeah.
The fellows also introduced me to Michael Segura, who has worked to make social change through public art and engagement.
There's always going to be struggles, right? And with the city, it's still done grassroots. I don't think there's really a lot of support from the actual city of San Bernardino. It's nonprofits, it's community members that are taking on, that movement of doing the public art, creating these beautiful spaces.
Part of his work now focuses on new education programs.
And we're looking at the purposeful pathways, which is how do we work within the school district to ensure that the pathways are leading to careers that make sense and industries that make sense and not just logistics.
Over the past 2 decades, citrus groves have slowly given way to warehouses. The relatively cheap, flat land around San Bernardino fuel the logistics, transportation, and distribution economy that's now the primary source of jobs in the county. The Fallows found that high schools were adjusting to take advantage of the new economy.
It's a very realistic approach to both keeping kids in school, supporting the kind of work that is necessary in that community, and kind of uplifting the whole scene.
Jim, it made things better than they might have been without this kind of training and this education, but it wasn't enough to completely turn around.
There's a category of cities that have real fundamental challenges, the same kind of industrial dislocation, the same kind of impoverishment, the same kind of governing problems. So the challenge is being simultaneously aware of all the realistic obstacles that a community faces and noticing the people who are trying to work around them, work against them, work for some better way.
But there's one topic the Fallows try to avoid in these local communities: national politics.
It sort of immediately ends the conversation. People are either in one camp or the other. If you ask them, what's the story of this town? Are kids moving in or moving away? What's happening with the port? What's happening with the water supply? They are the experts, and you can learn from them.
And people know so much about their hometowns. I think they're in a comfort zone talking about where they live in a way that national responses are a bit separated from you, a bit abstract from your everyday busy life.
Fun Friday.
Since the Fallows first met Ian Franklin, Project Fighting Chance moved into a new gym and has expanded to 10 school sites with plans to spread into neighboring districts.
I've had 16 national champions, and the one thing I do tell all these youth, in order to achieve, you first have to believe, because if you don't believe, you're not going to achieve it.
And that's something the Fallows have witnessed in recent years, a new dawn of community. Local stories they also continue to track on their Our Town Civic Foundation's website.
We hope and now believe that the history of the 2020s will be of all the problems we know at the national level and this emerging diaspora of people across the country figuring out solutions for the future.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Judy Woodruff in San Bernardino, California.